Welcome to the Deep Dive. You sent us the sources, and, well, we dive deep, pulling out the most interesting bits just for you.
Exactly. And today, we're tackling a classic X-Files episode, Season 3, Episode 14.
That's right, Grotesque.
Yeah.
Aired way back, February 2nd, 1996. And it's a standalone, a Monster of the Week story, not part of the main mythology arc.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission really is to unpack the story itself and then dig into some of those maybe lesser-known details about how it was made and received.
Yeah, there's some genuinely unsettling stuff here, but also some really creative background elements to uncover. Should be good.
Okay, let's get into the story then. It opens in an art class.
Right, and straight away something feels wrong.
Totally. Everyone else is drawing the nude model, but this one guy, John Mostow,
he's drawing this really demonic, goblin creature.
and then he cuts his finger, sharpening his pencil, and smears blood right onto the drawing.
Ugh. Yeah, it's a potent image right off the bat. Tells you this guy is, disturbed.
What does that contrast signal to you? The expected versus his obsession.
It just screams inner turmoil, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that connection, his actual blood on this demonic image, it sets the whole unsettling tone perfectly.
And things escalate fast. The model leaves.
Finds a pencil jammed in his car door, which
Right.
is just weirdly menacing,
It really is. And then bang, he's attacked, stabbed with the utility knife.
Ugh.
Brutal.
Yeah, very sudden. Next morning, FBI are all over Mostow's apartment.
They arrest him, and he actually bites one of the agents, Nemhauser.
He does. Just this raw, animalistic moment. And inside his place.
Oh, man. The walls are just covered in these drawings, right? All those demonic figures again.
Exactly. And they find the utility knife bloody. It really visually confirms his obsession, seeing his space like that.
So this is where Mulder and Scully come in. Mostow, he's this Russian immigrant.
And he's suspected in, 7 murders?
Yeah.
Young men?
Yeah. And the way they were killed is gruesome. Their faces were mutilated.
Horrific. And Mostow, despite having this history of being committed back in Russia,
He claims it wasn't him, says he was possessed.
by a gargoyle, specifically. A demon.
And that's the hook for Mulder, of course. The possession claim, even with the mental health background.
Right. That facial mutilation detail, though. It suggests something beyond just killing, doesn't it? Like destroying identity.
Definitely. So it throws up that classic X-Files question right away. Is this psychological, or is it something else?
Precisely. And when Mulder and Scully see him in prison,
He's still obsessed. He's drawn a gargoyle on the cell floor.
insisting it's still controlling him, even locked up.
And that's where we meet the other key players. FBI Task Force leader Bill Patterson.
And Agent Nemhauser again, the one who got bitten.
Patterson's been on this case for 3 years.
3 years, yeah. And he's dead set on the idea that Mostow had an accomplice.
Which Mulder finds, let's say, questionable at first. Especially since Patterson's own initial profile pointed towards a lone killer.
Yeah, you immediately sense friction there. Patterson's deeply invested, maybe a bit tunnel-visioned after all this time.
And there's history there, too.
Oh, absolutely. Mulder tells Scully later Patterson was actually his mentor back at Quantico.
Right, in the investigative support unit.
Yeah.
But they had a falling out.
Mulder being Mulder, right? Thinking outside the box, questioning methods.
Didn't sit well with Patterson's more by-the-book style.
But Mulder remembers this key lesson Patterson taught him.
To understand an artist, you have to study his art.
And that becomes super important as they investigate Mostow's work. It kind of explains that underlying tension between them, too. Patterson probably feels let down. Mulder didn't follow his path exactly.
So back at Mostow's apartment, which everyone thought was thoroughly searched,
Mulder and Scully find something else, a hidden passageway.
cleverly concealed. And it leads to this secret room.
And what's inside is just horrifying.
Life-size clay gargoyles. But
They're not solid. Mulder figures it out. They're hollow shells.
hiding bodies, 5 more young men, mutilated the same way.
It just escalates everything, doesn't it? It's not just murder anymore. It's ritualistic. It's grotesque.
Yeah.
Hiding them like that inside these monstrous forms. What does that say about the killer's mind?
Exactly. So while they're processing this, another attack happens.
A glass blower this time, critically injured.
And at the hospital, Nemhauser says something interesting to Scully.
Yeah, about Patterson. How, despite the friction, Patterson actually respects Mulder's abilities.
Maybe even admires them. Hints that Patterson specifically asked for Mulder and Scully.
Which adds another layer to their whole dynamic, right? Patterson's annoyed when Scully mentions Mulder's looking into the gargoyle stuff, though. He's still stuck on the accomplice theory.
Later, Patterson finds Mulder in the library,
Totally immersed in gargoyle research.
learning about how they were traditionally meant to be protectors, warding off evil spirits.
Patterson is not impressed, thinks it's a waste of time, tells Mulder he's disappointed.
Meanwhile, Scully goes to Mulder's apartment.
And it's covered. Just sketches of gargoyles everywhere.
She then finds Mulder back at Mastaw's studio, and he's not just looking.
He's sculpting one himself, really intensely.
He falls asleep there and wakes up to, well, a nightmare scenario.
Sees this figure, looks like a gargoyle looming over him.
He chases it, but gets attacked, slashed across the face with a utility knife.
It's a huge turning point. Mulder's immersion, his obsession, it's like the darkness is starting to touch him directly.
Scully finds out he was there alone middle of the night, and she is furious.
Understandably, she tries to rationalize the attack, maybe a vagrant.
But Mulder just shuts her down and leaves. Classic Mulder secrecy.
So Scully confronts Patterson.
And Patterson admits something surprising. Says he brought Mulder in because only Mulder could solve it, not to see him fail.
Tells her not to interfere, that she wouldn't be able to help anyway, which is ominous.
And as Scully's leaving, she spots it. A disassembled utility knife under a police car.
Just lying there. A crucial piece of evidence, seemingly missed, or maybe hidden.
Mulder then goes back to Mostow in prison. He's desperate now.
Wants to know why the gargoyle didn't kill him during the attack.
Mostow gives him nothing, so Mulder actually hits him, which is very unlike Mulder.
Yeah, shows how much the case is affecting him, but Mostow says something chilling.
Suggests anyone could be possessed. Even Mulder. Maybe he already is.
Plants that seed of doubt. Meanwhile, Scully gets lab results.
Fingerprints on that disassembled knife.
They're Mulder's.
Oh boy. And then she goes to the evidence warehouse, just before Skinner calls her in.
And the original utility knife, the first murder weapon, it's gone, missing.
So now both Scully and Skinner are seriously worried about Mulder's behavior. All these pieces. Mulder's prints, the missing weapon. It's not looking good.
Things get even darker. Mulder has this nightmare.
He's attacked by the gargoyle, but then its face becomes his own reflection.
Super disturbing symbolism of his inner conflict. He wakes up, goes back to Mostow's studio.
Finds a new gargoyle sculpture there. And a trail of blood.
Leading to a severed human arm.
Then a phone rings. It's in a coat nearby. Mulder picks it up.
And it's Scully, calling Nemhauser's phone.
Nemhauser had left her a message saying he needed to talk. She's calling Mulder now, asking why he was in evidence about the fingerprints.
Mulder's evasive. Says he wanted to feel the weapon, doesn't know where Nemhauser is.
Scully says she's on her way. Mulder hangs up, frantic.
And starts tearing apart that new gargoyle sculpture.
Inside, it's Nemhauser. Dismembered, face slashed, just like the others.
It's just the horrifying peak of all the tension that's been building. And Mulder finding him, answering his phone. Pure dread.
And right at that moment,
Patterson walks in.
Mulder sees the clay on Patterson's hands. Fresh clay.
And he just accuses him. Right there, you're the killer.
His theory is chilling. Patterson's method, the one he taught Mulder, identifying so intensely with the killer.
It went too far. He basically became Mostow, or possessed by the same thing, continued the killings.
Mulder figures Patterson killed Nemhauser because Nemhauser was about to expose him.
He holds Patterson at gunpoint, but then Scully arrives.
And sees Mulder holding a gun on his old mentor. She misreads it completely.
Patterson uses the confusion to run. There's a chase, a struggle.
And Mulder ends up shooting Patterson. Arrests him.
The irony, right? The mentor falling prey to the exact psychological danger he warned about. Deeply disturbing.
The final scene. Just stark. Patterson in a cell.
Proclaiming he's innocent. But behind him,
etched on the wall in soot and blood, another gargoyle face.
And Mulder's voiceover.
Reflecting on that danger, staring into the abyss, the risk of it staring back, awakening inner demons.
And he admits he can't really explain what he saw when he fought Patterson. Lives that shred of the unexplained hanging there.
That final image of Patterson, still obsessed, still drawing the gargoyle. It just lingers, doesn't it? Suggests evil isn't easily contained.
Yeah, it's a powerful end, a commentary on the risks of diving too deep into darkness, and maybe how evil can be drawn out from within us.
Okay, so that's the story. Now, let's shift gears a bit. Let's step behind the curtain into maybe the more mysterious side of how Grotesque came to be.
Yeah, let's talk about those whispers, those little nostalgic curiosities surrounding its creation. It adds another layer, I think.
Absolutely. So the initial spark, the very idea for this,
Yeah,
it's kind of cool.
it really is. Apparently the writer, Howard Gordon, was just walking in New York City.
And saw some gargoyles on a building, stone sentinels,
And bam! The idea hits him. Just from seeing those architectural details, it makes you wonder about those little moments, doesn't it? How inspiration strikes.
It really does. But the script itself, the story we saw, it wasn't quite the first draft.
No, there was apparently this 11th hour change. Right before they started filming?
Chris Carter, the creator, stepped in, wanted to push it deeper, make it more psychological.
Yeah, so the version we got was apparently quite different from the initial concept. It almost became a different beast, focused much more on Mulder's psyche. Knowing that, it does make you watch it a bit differently, perhaps.
I think so. It suggests that intense psychological focus wasn't there from the very start, but was a deliberate choice made late in the game.
Which speaks volumes about Carter's influence and the show's willingness to pivot, even right before shooting.
And the setting, the opening scene, the art class, that wasn't the original plan either.
Right. Initially, they wanted to film it in a Catholic hospital.
A place of healing, right. But they ran into issues. The hospital wasn't keen on having a fake gargoyle attached to their building for filming.
I can't blame them, really. So they ended up at Heritage Hall in Vancouver.
Which has its own interesting history. Used to be a post office, then a police office.
So it shifted from a sanctuary of healing to places associated with communication and law. There's a subtle irony there, considering the episode's themes. Maybe unintentional, but it's there.
Definitely adds a little something. And then there was this near disaster right at the start of filming.
Oh yeah, the sidewalk sabotage.
Basically, city workers showed up unexpectedly and started tearing up the sidewalk right where they needed to shoot.
Total panic, apparently. A real race against the clock.
They finished literally hours before filming was supposed to start.
Right.
It's like the real world was adding its own layer of tension.
Almost like an omen, mirroring the episode's unease. You hear stories like that about production sometimes. Those weird little hurdles.
And the director, Kim Manners, he really immersed himself to get the right feel.
He did. Reportedly, he listened to the soundtrack from the movie Jacob's Ladder over and over again during production.
Which, if you've seen Jacob's Ladder, you know it's incredibly surreal, deeply disturbing stuff.
Exactly. So Manners was clearly trying to tap into that same vein of psychological dread, that unsettling atmosphere. Using music like that, it's a fascinating insight into his process.
It really is. Now here's an interesting little tidbit, kind of looking forward.
Ah, the Millennium Connection.
Yeah, there are these whispers, suggestions really, that the whole dark psychological vibe of Grotesque
Might have influenced Chris Carter when he created his next series, Millennium, which launched the following year.
Millennium was also super dark, dealt with similar themes of evil and the minds of killers.
So it's intriguing, right? Was Grotesque just a one-off exploration, or did it kind of plant a seed for Carter's next big project, a harbinger of darkness to come?
Makes you wonder. Now, despite how dark it was, this episode was popular.
Hugely popular. Over 18 million viewers first time around, which is massive.
It suggests people were, and maybe still are, fascinated by this kind of descent into darkness.
There's definitely an appetite for it, but not everyone loved it.
No, definitely not universal praise. There was at least one critic who really disliked it, ranked it among their least favorite episodes ever.
Which just goes to show, when you push boundaries like this, explore really intense themes, you're going to get strong reactions both ways. It's divisive.
Very true. But on the flip side, it did get recognized for its craft.
It did indeed. It won an Emmy Award.
For outstanding cinematography, which really speaks to the visual style.
Absolutely. How they used light and shadow, that whole interplay of dark and light, was crucial to building that atmosphere of fear and dread. It shows artistic excellence can shine through, even in really dark genre stuff.
Definitely a testament to the visual storytelling.
For sure.
So, wrapping up our deep dive into Grotesque, we're really left thinking about that core tension, aren't we? The shaky line between what's real and what's delusion.
And just the sheer psychological weight of confronting that kind of darkness head on.
And for you listening, seeking those aha moments, this episode is such a powerful look at obsession, right? And the power of suggestion.
Yeah, how focusing too hard on something monstrous can start to warp your own reality, infect your perception.
Which brings us to that final, maybe uncomfortable thought to leave you with.
Could it be? Could really trying to understand evil to get inside the mind of a killer, could that act itself open you up somehow? Let the darkness seep in.
Or was Patterson doomed anyway? Was that darkness just waiting inside him, in this case just flipped the switch.
It definitely makes you think about looking too closely into that abyss and
Right.
what might be looking back